Everybody joining me on the podcast this week. Been a while since I talked to this guy, Logan Fowler. You can check him out. He covers the Auburn Tigers for 1819 News. And we'll get into a few things. Draft, Golesh, big signing, basketball, a bunch of different things in Auburn to go over. But Logan, appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah. Looking forward to having you on. A lot of cool stuff going on with Auburn right now. I guess the big thing, the draft after this weekend. And, looking at, I think we all thought Keldrick Falk was a good shot at first round. Kind of got dicey at the end with the Titans picking them there at 31. Keon Crawford going to third round. Jeremiah Wright. I guess I'm not shocked, but you obviously had Bobby Jameson Travis go in there to the Giants last. I look at this draft class, Connor Lew going to the Bengals, and I just feel like this is a guy. Man, had he not had that injury, this would have been a higher draft pick for him.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about a 2025 team captain last year, before he missed, I think it was the final 6 games of last season with that ACL injury. He was a freshman All-American when he took over for Avery Jones in 2023. He was kind of thrust into that starting role. Big signing day flip over from Miami, if I'm not mistaken. So he was a big recruiting win. He was obviously, like I mentioned a moment ago, he was kind of just thrown into things as a freshman, and he just continued to progress. Probably, you talk about Auburn's offensive line over the years and all of the woes that it's had and just, I guess overall poor offensive line play, ever since really the 2021 season. But Connor Lew was kind of like the bright spot for Auburn fans on the front five for the past couple of years. I think he was set to be a first round pick had he not had that ACL injury. I think that, fourth round, I kind of predicted third to fourth round for Connor Lew. I thought he would be picked up before Keyron Crawford, honestly. But Keyron was picked up in the third round. And I'm kind of with you. I think that, Bobby Jameson Travis, he wasn't quite on my radar. I had four Tigers going in the draft. Obviously, the previous 4 we mentioned with Keldrick Falk, Connor Lew, Keyron Crawford, and Jeremiah Wright. I even thought that it could end up at 3 with Jeremiah Wright sliding off the board somehow, some way. Glad to see that. First offensive lineman drafted since 2020, Prince Tegawanogo. So that's obviously big. And I saw somebody put out, maybe it was this morning or something like that, just the numbers that like Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia are constantly putting into the draft on the offensive line. And then you talk about Auburn, this is their first offensive lineman drafted in 5 years, right? 6 years. So can Auburn find a way to consistently start, producing the big hog mollies and put them in the NFL draft? That's going to be huge for Auburn, obviously, in years to come. But, not to get off on a tangent here, but I think that it was a healthy NFL draft for Auburn. Obviously, you'd like to see them probably have a few more in the coming years, and I think that's very possible. I actually had somebody this morning, email me in my inbox or something off of the story, my recap story that I wrote on the NFL draft. And my lead was, it was a drought breaking, NFL draft process for Auburn. Keldrick Falk, breaks a 5-year drought going in the first round. And he said, no, absolutely not. You missed Bo Nix. And I was like, well, no, I didn't miss Bo Nix. As bad as I would love to have seen Bo Nix get drafted in the first round by Auburn, I didn't miss him. But no, he was pretty adamant that I missed Bo Nix. So it was pretty funny. But overall, I thought it was a pretty healthy NFL draft. Glad to see Keldrick Falk get in the first round. I'm excited to see what he can do in Tennessee.
Hey, if Alabama's not going to be able to claim Jalen Hurts, Auburn shouldn't be the same thing with Bo Nix. And I was kind of with you about Bobby Jameson Travis. So the Auburn Wire, we're trying to put out these articles after each guy gets picked up. So after I did the Connor Lew one, and then one of the other guys did the Jeremiah Wright one, I kind of shut the laptop and I was just going to go, watch some other stuff. And the next thing I know, over my phone, here comes he got picked up. So, okay, we surprise pick. I think we kind of figured, okay, Auburn's day is done until the undrafted free agents started hitting.
Yeah, I finished up most of my stuff after Jeremiah Wright, and then obviously Bobby Jameson Travis got picked up. But I think that's, I mean, you talk about a guy who's a pretty big defensive tackle. I think he started all 12 games last year and produced a career high in tackles. And he was a former number one JUCO prospect out of Iowa and a highly rated recruit from the JUCO level. So that's great. Vontrell King-Williams, 3 defensive linemen. I guess if you want to count Kieran Crawford in there as a defensive lineman. So he's producing. I think that's something you could obviously get accustomed to with Vontrell King-Williams and DJ Durkin manning the Auburn defense. Also, I just get a quick shout out to Jeremiah Wright, a guy who stuck it out at Auburn through all the ups and downs, all the injuries, all the coaching staffs. There's, I guess you would say, a true quote unquote Auburn man. And I'm glad to see that he got picked up. In the NFL, and I hope he does very well.
Yeah. Now, the undrafted free agents, now as a Packers fan, I'm glad to see Dylan Wade come up there. I was looking at it, and I wrote the piece on for us over at Auburn Wire about Brandon Frazier. I forgot he had been at Auburn basically 6 years, as long as he's been there at tight end, but always a reliable guy, good blocking tight end too. So you feel like, there's not as many of those now, the really good blocking tight end. So I kind of feel, he could find him a good spot in the NFL.
Yeah. You talking about Brandon Frazier? I'm sorry, I think I cut out for a second. Yeah, no, Brandon Frazier was another guy who felt like he was at Auburn for ages. He was obviously a big target, had a couple injuries. But I always thought, I remember when Auburn signed him, and I was really excited about the pickup, of Brandon Frazier. I do think that, he probably could have produced better numbers at Auburn, but, overall, I think that he's a guy who, if he continues to work out and continues to find a way to get a little bit more athletic, better route running, a little bit better hands, I think that he could find a spot, on an NFL roster and obviously a big target at 6'7". They'll figure out a way to, put a guy out there who's that big and can move if, he can find out all the little ins and outs of the NFL.
Yeah, I always felt like it was a missed opportunity at Auburn. He could have been used a lot more on the goal line. That he would have, because once again, his blocking ability. So maybe you don't think he's going to go out for a pass and then he catch it, because a lot of times he hits his hands. He caught it. Looking at the current Tigers, Alex Golesh, of course, we're over a week removed from the conclusion of spring practice. I feel like he has done a good job of bringing some excitement to Auburn, obviously with Byron Brown. And, he threw 2 interceptions in the spring game, but we both know you're also going against DJ Durkin's defense, which in these things, the defense is always ahead. And there's a lot of really good guys still coming back on it. Xavier Atkins. Jared Smith made a fantastic interception on Byron Brown in the game. I don't really think Byron Brown made a bad throw, but what's kind of like your feeling so far with Alex Golesh as spring practice has concluded?
Yeah. I mean, I've really liked what I've seen and heard out of Alex Golesh and this staff thus far. I think, like you mentioned, for Auburn fans, you're kind of getting a breath of fresh air. This staff kind of seems to approach things a little bit differently than the previous one did. Obviously you have some carryover on the defensive side of the ball with DJ Durkin and Vontrell King-Williams, but I mean, nobody was complaining about those two. Nobody was complaining about the defense, right? I mean, we always heard last year how different the defensive intensity was in practice under Durkin, and we kind of, saw that carry over into the final stretch when he took over as the interim head coach. But, I mean, all in all, I think Golesh he's a very detail-oriented guy. He's intentional. He's a blue-collar, type of coach, and I think that I think that's going to pay dividends for Auburn on the field this fall. It's just a group that's as talented as last year's group on paper. Probably not, no. But I think your team kind of plays and takes after how the head coach approaches things. And I think, if you have a group of 11 players on offense and 11 players on defense that are ready to go head to head with the opposing team and just kind of whoop their tail, that in itself is going to give Auburn a better shot at winning football games. I think that's what Alex Golesh, brings to the sidelines at Auburn. So All in all, I'm impressed by what I've seen and the work that Auburn did through the portal. But I'll be honest with you, Phillip. I mean, I honestly loved what Hugh Freeze did in his first offseason as the head man. We saw how that turned out. I like how Brian Harsin approached things. He was kind of a blue collar type guy, no nonsense type of guy, and I really liked that about Brian Harsin. Obviously we saw how that turned out. So, I'm not comparing Alex Golesh to those two in any way. And I do think that he'll ultimately see more success at Auburn than those two combined. But I guess for me, I love it. I love what I'm seeing and hearing so far, but I guess there's a sense of cautious optimism for me. When looking at Alex Golesh and his first season on the Plains, but I mean, so far for me, so good. I like what I'm seeing. I like what I'm hearing. I really like the staff that he's put together, especially the defensive staff with, DJ Durkin and BKW coming back. I really like Hutzler. He's a very animated and intense guy. I think you have tons of experience in Tim Banks and, between Tim Banks and Coleman Hutzler and DJ Durkin, you've got tons of SEC experience. I like DeMarcus Van Dyke as a young up-and-comer on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, you've got a lot of USF guys on the offensive side of the ball that you brought over. So, I don't know. I'm impressed. I do like the staff. I think that, and we'll probably get into a little bit more recruiting here in a minute, but if I have one thing to kind of nitpick so far throughout the offseason, it's probably going to be high school recruiting. But I take that with a grain of salt, man. I mean, this staff they came in here and had signing day three days after he was hired, right? Then you have portal. Then you have football. It's actually football time, and you've had a whole month and a half of actual football, and so I'm going to give them a little bit of a pass on high school recruiting so far.
Yeah, I tell you, one thing that I'm intrigued offensively. I know everybody makes the jokes about all the South Florida players on offense. You can call the offense the Auburn Bulls. I guess just with all of them sprinkled out, but I'm really intrigued and excited what the running game can be. Obviously, Byron Brown at quarterback. That thing with the spring game, we didn't get to see because they're not going to let the quarterback get hit, so you don't really get to see Byron Brown release. Get to really show what he's fully capable, what he's going to do in actual games. But then you add in Jeremiah Cobb coming back. I think that was one of the biggest recruiting jobs done by the staff is getting Jeremiah Cobb back, who obviously was the best offensive player on this team last year. And then now Bryson Washington comes in from Baylor. Not a great year last year, but we saw what he was capable of the year before. And Davenport coming in, just what they currently have at running back. So this team has, I think, potential offensively to be not just one of the best rushing teams in the SEC, but one of the best rushing teams in the country, just kind of like with all those parts they have with that part of the offense.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think Jeremiah Cobb, obviously he was a few yards shy of 1,000 yards last year. And had he gotten the carries that he should have gotten in the early goings and the early parts of the season, he would have easily surpassed that, right? You kind of hoping, Auburn fans are probably kind of hoping that Jeremiah Cobb and Bryson Washington can be what Cobb and Damari Alston were supposed to be last year. Obviously, you get into SEC play, and I think they had like 23 combined carries in 2 games to start SEC play last year. It's just terrible. Didn't commit to the run, and that was just a mess. But you've got a head coach right now who has promised since the first day he stepped on the Plains, to run the ball. Like he said, we're going to run the freaking ball. We're going to run the piss out of the ball. He's always talking about running the football and just smacking people in the head while they're doing it. So again, we talk about the blue collar lineup and just what the person in front of in front of his butt. I think that Alex Golesh has that. And they obviously, you just mentioned the crop of running backs that this team has and this team possesses. I think Bryson Washington needs to produce more than what he produced last year. I think he needs to produce a little bit more than what he did in the spring. You've got Nakai Davenport, who's familiar with the offense. I think that's great. Tay Meadows coming over. You've got a lot of experience and a lot of athleticism. And, as long as this team commits to the run and then obviously can figure out a way to scheme it up to where, the offensive line is doing well run blocking.
I'm not running back and also a big weekend. recruiting wise. We talked about a little bit of high school recruiting with landing one of the best running back prospects for the 2027 class, Myson Johnson Cook, picks Auburn over Miami and LSU. And I think that just sends a message to everybody around that this coaching staff isn't messing around about bringing in a high level talent from the high school ranks when it comes to high school recruiting.
Yeah. Alex Golesh has talked about he's going to attack the Southeast region hard. He thinks it's a gold mine for talent. He does want to build his squad through the high school ranks. Obviously, he was not able to do that this year. But I do think that that's something you're going to continue to see is Golesh hitting the high school, the trail really hard. Myson Johnson Cook, big running back out of Illinois, 6'2", 235. Auburn has not signed a running back of this mold in a while. I'm thinking maybe size-wise, Harold Joyner. He wasn't really impactful at Auburn, but you pretty much have to go back to Cam Petway to find the last productive bruising back that came through Auburn. However, this guy's definitely not just a bruiser. He's reported 40 times in the 4.4s, 100 meters on the track, and 10.3. He's Auburn's highest rated recruit in the 27 class. I don't have his numbers in front of me right now, but I do believe he's rushed for over 2,000 yards in the last 2 seasons. So huge pickup for Auburn. Obviously you've got to hold on to him, but if this is the type of running back that Alex Golesh and Auburn's going to sign in years to come, I love it. I love the big bruising physical running backs. Talking about overall recruiting, there's, no need to just panic just yet where Auburn sits in the recruiting rankings. I think 247 has them at 53rd overall, 15th in the SEC, which is obviously not great. Again, with the way the portal works now, you're just going to have to come to expect some high school classes to just be smaller than others in some years. Talked about Golesh wanting to build his squads through the high school ranks. Again, he's harped on how talented the Southeast region is. He obviously has ties in Florida. Alabama has become a recruiting hotbed in recent years. So, you got some camps coming up and such, summer camps. I don't know what they're going to call the Big Cat Weekend or whatever anymore, but you've got some, visits that'll be taking place. So I do think that it's going to start picking up some steam here in the summer months.
Yeah, just looking ahead to next year, I think the schedule is quite interesting when you're looking at Auburn, what they have. Obviously, the Baylor game, which I know a lot of Auburn fans are upset it's not going to be in Auburn, but it's going to be there in Atlanta. I feel like the Florida game is probably one of the, if not one of the most important games early on in the year. We know what the Iron Bowl is, and obviously Golesh knows what it is. We're having basically the Iron Bowl segment there in practice every day. But how are you feeling on that? Because it just, again, that game in Florida's coming. Obviously, a lot of Auburn fans thought John Summerall was coming to Auburn, and I feel like it's the same thing for Florida. I think that's a big game early on for Florida too as well. So it's one of those games for both those teams where under new head coaches where it could really be a jumping point for either team, but especially on the Auburn side of things, if they could pick up a win at home against the Gators.
Yeah, 100%. We talked about, I mentioned earlier the cautious optimism that Auburn fans need to have for expectations in year one under Golesh. And, part of the reason why is because of the schedule that he inherited, the schedule that he's going to come in and face. You mentioned, obviously, before I get to Florida, you open up with Baylor. Auburn moved it over there to NIL purposes and benefits. You'd like to think that with David Aranda on the hot seat and Sawyer Robertson no longer at the helm of the offense, that it would be a surefire win. But speaking of Florida, DJ Lagway makes the move over to Waco, kind of looking for a fresh start under Spavital over there in Waco. So that's an important one as well. I think you've got to get week one underway, right? So you should have a 2-0 start. Southern Miss week 2 before Florida makes its first trip to the Plains since 2011. Obviously, that's going to be a fun one to watch because of John Summerall and Alex Golesh. All the talk about Summerall being your first option, and that'll cause some uproar if you lose. Obviously, I personally think that with it being at home, I think you pick up a win. Still really early, obviously, to tell. You're going to have 2 weeks to obviously gauge that game a little bit better and get a better feel for it. But the reason, again, that one's so important is the next week you come and you play Vandy. I think next year Vandy falls off a little bit, even with the addition of Jared. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I did too. I was agreeing with you.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I think that Vandy falls off even with the addition of Jared Curtis, the 5-star. Diego Pavia was a baller. Okay, he had some off the field issues and all that, and I didn't really like that. But the dude was just a winner. So I think that Vandy falls off of that. You get to 4-0. It's the 4-0 is a must for me in this schedule. I think not just for me, it's just a must. So that's why you mentioned the Florida game. Obviously, it's fun for all the storylines. John Summerall, Alex Golesh, first-year head coaches, first time that Florida's come to Auburn in over a decade. All these things. It's first SEC game at home. Going to be great. Going to be fun. Got to get a win there against Florida because what looms is a stretch of games in October at Tennessee, at Georgia, at home versus LSU and Lane Kiffin, and then you got to go to Ole Miss to end the month of October. So look at that stretch. You are very liable to go 0-4. I think the most gettable is Tennessee. If you can somehow find a way to go 2-2 during that stretch, that's huge because if you find a way to get 2-2 during that stretch, where does that second win come from? I don't know. Maybe LSU at home. I would say LSU at home over Ole Miss on the road, certainly over Georgia on the road. But if you somehow find a way to get 2-2 during that stretch, you cannot afford losses at home versus Arkansas, who's also in a rebuild year. Can't afford to lose to Mississippi State, who's coming off another poorest showing in 2025. You win versus Sanford, and then you have the Iron Bowl. I think that Alex Golesh is the first-year head coach to, have a trip to Tuscaloosa on the docket. So, can Alex Golesh become the first-year head coach at Auburn to march into Tuscaloosa and win? That'd be a great way to end your season. I mean, I'll go ahead and give a way too early prediction, I guess, right here. But I'm going to go 7-5. I personally think that you start off 4-0. I think you get a win against Florida. I think you get the win against Vandy. I think you lose every game in October. Like, I really do. That's a tough stretch. With your only home game being against LSU, who's probably going to be a little bit more talented, probably going to be rolling with Lane Kiffin. I mean, we'll see. 7-5, and then your other loss. If I had to pick one, it would come in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, because like I said, you got Arkansas, Mississippi State, and you got Stanford. So those are 3 games. On paper, Auburn should win. They're more talented than those teams, and you mentioned those first 4. And Auburn has not won Tuscaloosa since 2010. The comeback is the last time they've won in Tuscaloosa. So it has been a while. Maybe Golesh could change that for Auburn. Where they it seems like win or lose in Jordan-Hare, it's close, but when they go to Bryant-Denny, it's been a completely different story. So I'm with you. Yeah, that Vanderbilt. I don't think Vanderbilt's going to be as good. I know a lot of people out there, were wanting, their guy to be the next Auburn coach. And I'm kind of like, I want to see if what Vanderbilt can do without Diego Pavia.
Absolutely.
Was it, Pavia that made them successful, or was it just the, everything they did do good, everything else right? I want to see. That's kind of that would be a telltale sign for Vanderbilt. So football season, we hadn't hit May yet. It feels like it's a long ways away, but at the same time, it's really not. It'll be here before we know it. And Logan, appreciate you coming on. A lot of fun talking with you. I had some little internet cutting in and out here as we were recording, but a lot of people won't know that because I've edited it such that nobody will know that. So, anyways, appreciate you coming on. Can you tell the listeners and viewers where they can find all your work and that you do it over at 1819 News?
Yep, absolutely. You can check me over at 1819news.com. You can also check me out on X at Logan F. Fowler. I'm pretty plugged into the Auburn baseball Tigers over there who have got a brutal stretch to end the season. So, got a lot of baseball coverage rolling out right now. So you can go check that out again at 1819 News and then Logan F. Fowler on X.
All right, everybody go give Logan a follow for all things Auburn athletics. And again, Logan, I appreciate your time and I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me.